In this edition of Winning My Podcasting, it's time for me to do a little bit of breaking news, following up on my main focus of the Broadcasters podcast this past Thursday about the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, the IATSE, and the fact that this particular organization that encompasses all the behind-the-scenes people around Hollywood, from, stage hands, camera operators, grips, hair and makeup people, everything behind the scenes. They are all part of a union, a strong union that decided now it was time for the agreement to be put up for a vote. And they all agreed because the EMPTP had not come up with a deal beforehand. They put together a strike authorization vote last week. And then on the program on Thursday, I talked about how there was a countdown being put, a Monday night 12:01 a.m. deadline for a deal to be struck before everybody goes on strike. Well, a deal has been struck. A deal has been submitted by the Association of Motion Picture and Television Producers, and I'm recording this right now in New York time, 12:05 a.m. Eastern time. So it would be, 3 hours before what's going on over there on the West Coast? And so a deal has been struck, but it has not been voted on yet. So I'm waiting till the Broadcasters podcast. So I do that episode next week, or coming up on Thursday, going into Friday. I'll go ahead and talk about that then. But let's talk about now, while I have a minute, because of course this goes up on the YouTube channel, and I'm on one of my podcasting channel. I've been talking about it, so no doubt this is where I'm going to drop it in. So here's what we learned about so far. This would have been the first Hollywood strike in its history, reaching a deal, IATSE, with Hollywood film and TV producers 2 days before the union's deadline. Full details are still to come, but many rank-and-file members are expressing early skepticism and disappointment at what they have heard so far about this deal. And so the wrap, and I'm also going to read from the deadline, I believe they also have this, Variety. There's been several social media interactions and conversations being made with several below the line, Hollywood workers in IATSE not pleased with the working conditions issues like lunch breaks and turnarounds detailed in the memo sent on Sunday night announcing the 3-year deal. So what's happening now is part of the deal that was being done when it comes to streaming and making sure there was bonuses, getting pensions fulfilled to a higher degree, and trying to work on things like workaround times. There were certain things that were done, but there's only a certain amount of things that were brought to the deal. And I think what happened was the AMPTP put a deal together with at least a certain amount to stop the strike. This is just to stop the strike. But the deal could be negated, and in that time, maybe the deal will be renegotiated before then. But this is actually, I think this is just a premature attempt to stop the strike, to not make it happen. That's where I think things are going. So early reactions show how emotions have run high among Hollywood's workers, who have grown frustrated with grueling working conditions, low pay, and voted almost unanimously last month to authorize a strike. Now that the strikes have averted, IATSE President Matthew Loeb and union leadership will need to assure members of the terms that were won are a significant victory. A 3%, this is what they actually got, in this deal if they decide to vote yes on it, collectively. A 3% increase in scale wages, a dramatic rate increase for nearly all streaming productions, a guaranteed living wage for the lowest paid IATSE positions like writers, assistants, and script coordinators. But they also need to figure out that there's more to this. A memo was sent to members announcing the deal. The two sides agreed to 10-hour turnarounds on weekdays, meaning a maximum of 14-hour work days, 54-hour turnarounds on weekends for shoots with 5-day work weeks. And so they decided this was going to be done to eliminate what was called fracture days, a term used to describe shoots that begin on Friday evening and last until Sunday morning. And a memo to members. Well, here's what's also being said in here as well. I'm going to make sure this point is also said. For crew workers that are not on certain productions, the turnaround, the universal 10-hour turnaround rule doesn't necessarily mean a change in their daily working environment. So there have been complaints where union members have been discussing the negotiations where many members expressed frustration in the hours following the deal announcement about how they already had 10-hour turnarounds in recent productions. And the term on weekend turnarounds described as 54 and 32 hours, meaning that studios can still designate productions for 6-day work weeks as long as a 32-hour turnaround is guaranteed. One poster says, with a leadership quote, is cheering 10-hour turnarounds and bearing everything else in fine print without details. You don't have to read it to know it's a shitty deal. And then for some, talking about the 10-hour turnaround, it would not be enough time for crew workers like hair and makeup artists and script coordinators who already have early call times and can be on set for the entire duration of filming. Then there was the part of lunch breaks, which crews have regularly been instructed by producers to work through. Penalties for productions that delay or work through lunch breaks have increased dramatically to discourage this practice. They were doing penalties, paying people to skip the lunch breaks or skip the meal breaks altogether. Well, these are the things that I think and I predict are still going to keep the IATSE members from signing this deal and going forward. So they got the kickback now on streaming. The 10-hour workaround time, they now have to honor it. The Hollywood studios have to, if they haven't been doing so. But the members are not saying it's not enough. Like, it's the 10-hour turnaround time was already there. The meal breaks are still a problem. The workaround times, the time to rest and recuperate, are not there either. So they're going to stay on top of this and not give up on this strike. Now, some people are going to say, well, this is good. Let's just go and take the money and just deal with it as it is. Well, I think some people are going to go and keep their foot on the ground and take the advantage and say, you know what? No, we're not taking this deal. We can get a better deal. And I think by Thursday or Friday, I'll have more information about that. And the Broadcasters Podcast will talk about that, which I will go at more at length. So I recommend you go and listen to my episode for this past Thursday to Friday. Check out my last episode 196. And then stay tuned and make sure to subscribe and download the Broadcasters Podcast and check it out with me if you're interested in this story. In the meantime, I'll talk to you soon.